Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, thank you, Alisa, and welcome to you all, and big namaste to you all from the Indian side. We have a team of people here to talk about the Indian wind energy outlook and also the COVID. To start with, I will just go with GWEC CEO Ben. Ben, could you just tell us about the overall scenario on a landscape through this global wind energy count thing in India? Over to you, Ben. Yeah, Ben, could you just give us some landscape through the global scenario on the wind?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you everyone for attending, and thanks to the team for organising this. Thanks, Jay, and I wanted to extend a special thanks also for our colleagues at MEC Intelligence, who we are and have been working with on an important report around the outlook for the India wind sector, which we started working on before COVID, the onset of COVID. And thanks also to Amar from Vestas, who's one of our speakers today, who has a very kind of acute insight onto the kind of real problems day to day in keeping the wind sector going in India in these very challenging times. So thank you, first of all of you. I just want to say just one brief remark about India. I mean, India has particular importance for the Global Wind Energy Council, and it's a place where we've been working for many years, and under the leadership of the late and lamented Steve Sawyer. The reason it's so important is obviously in climate terms, it's really where one of the places where the climate battle will be won or lost. As you know, India went onto a trajectory of very high growing energy demand, and also burning fossil fuels at an increasing rate, and then also quite quickly became a leading wind player and wind energy player. And I guess India for us is both one of the greatest opportunities and the greatest challenges. India, as you know, has quite ambitious renewable energy and wind energy targets. So it's a place where we think the overall political momentum is with us, and where in the political arena and the public arena, we very much feel that the proverbial wind is in our sails. And so we're very happy about the kind of overall direction where India wants to go. But it's also a place, as you know, and as you'll see from the figures that will be presented to you today, that it's become very difficult to actually get things done on the ground. So India has kind of got very, very good targets, but has really underperformed in terms of actual execution over the last few years, particularly. And so for us at GWEC, it's really, really important that we work together with India government, with state governments, with stakeholders, with communities and people in India to try and solve these problems. Because if we can do that working together, then India will take its place as being one of the top wind markets in the world, along with China and the US, as it should be. And we're confident that with the kind of momentum around the energy transition, India will be a key player in this and will be able to reach its targets. But it's it's how we get to that, and it's working together to try and solve some of these practical implementation problems. And that's why we've set up a specific GWEC India team and operation led by Jay, as well, with our companies and partners. And then just a word around COVID. I mean, COVID is having a major effect on the industry. The question for me is, what's the midterm effect? So we know, that there's an immediate impact because of supply chain and delays. If we get this right, and government works together with us in the right way, and recovery is managed in the right way, then we're pretty confident that most of this will spill over, and most of these projects will spill over into 2021. However, the question is, how quickly and effectively we come out of this, and how much governments understand that renewables and wind in particular need to be at the center of recovery and the contribution that they can make. And then we go into the kind of more midterm impacts around energy demand, whether planned tenders and auctions around the world continue, whether lower energy prices impact things like PPA markets and so on and so forth. So GWEC is very, very involved in trying to make sure that our voice and the wind industry's voice is really understood in policy circles, so that the form of recovery from COVID happens in the right way that allows us to keep momentum around climate and to get growth going again, and allows us to really contribute to jobs and investment in a way that helps the entire economy to recover. And I think India is going to be really in a particularly kind of acute position around this as it comes out of COVID and recovery begins. So thank you again for attending, and we're looking forward to working with all of you to try and get this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. That was a nice way to set up the discussion on with the global scenario and India keeping as an emerging front. And the next speaker will be Sidharth, and as you know that we are preparing the market outlook, which is going to be launched shortly in May. And Sidharth will take us through the insight of how the report is there, and also cover some areas on the COVID-19. Over to you, Sidharth.
Thank Francis, and thank you, Ben, for the introduction and giving us the opportunity to present our views today and how we see the market outlook. Before starting the presentation, I'll tell a little bit about what MEC is. So we are a company which has been working in the renewable energy and clean tech market for the last 10 years. And we have been working with a number of European companies in the wind sector to help them set up their base in India and develop business in India, be it OEMs, be it supply chain players who want to localize, be it the investment firms who are looking at buying platforms and assets, which has given us a kind of a 360-degree view of the market, in the sense that what is the supply, what is the demand, what is the regulation, what is the economics. And we are hoping to kind of bring some of that today during the presentation and take the audience through what is really happening around India. So we start by looking at the market, and the expectations here are always set by the large targets that are given by the government. It is in response to the huge demand that is there in India. We all know that the FY22 target is around 60 gigawatt. And in the paper that was published by the Central Electricity Authority of India in 2019, where they kind of analyzed the energy mix for India, they envisioned that wind could contribute up to 140 gigawatt of the energy mix in India by 2030. So today we are at 38 gigawatt. The interim target with incentives and policies have been laid out for 60, and the envisioned share of mix is around 140 gigawatt towards 2030. Year-on-year installations were increasing. From 2011, they were at 2.3 level. They rose up to 5.5 gigawatt. And you can see that from 2011 to 2017, there was a consistent increase in the amount of installations on the ground year-on-year. This was driven by a sharp decline in the price of wind energy, where it started to make economic sense to put in more and more renewables. And the price almost dropped by 50%, especially in 2017, when we saw the price dropping because of the auctions coming in. In 2018, 19, and 20, the activity levels dropped to around 1.8, 1.9 gigawatt level. And this was basically driven by the change in policy and all the players adjusting to this new policy environment. And the pipeline today exists at 8.6 gigawatt. Next slide, please. But if you look at the activity in the background, it was quite robust. As per our estimates, NEC Plus estimates, we believe that around 18 gigawatt of pipeline was issued in the market, 14 gigawatt coming from the central government authority, and then 4 gigawatt approximately coming from the state government authorities, which are the direct consumers. And around 18 gigawatt of demand was kind of placed in the market, which roughly translates to 6 gigawatt per year. And this is then in line with the level of installation that we're seeing previously. So in the background, the market was coming up with huge demand. There was continuous, installation that were happening. But what happened was that in the supply side in 2019, there was some challenges which led to the lack of enthusiasm from the supply side to participate in the tenders. So if you look at this slide, we have the graphic here where we have plotted 3 data points. One is what were the tenders that were issued. Second was how many applications were received for that tender. And third was what was finally subscribed to. In the central auctions, the first 2 years, 2017 and 18, most of the tenders were oversubscribed. You would see that at least 50% higher applications were received and 100% subscription of the tenders were done. And this was a sudden shift in the supply side enthusiasm in 2019 when the demand was there, but the supply side was not participating in the auction, and the overall award was even less, around 50% of what was there. This was again, as I said, due to the change in the policies that were there. In the state side, the market completely dropped off. And especially if you look at in 2019, only 10% of the demand was subscribed because states wanted to match the price that was being discovered in central auctions, which was not possible because of a myriad of reasons. So they kind of canceled some of the tenders that were awarded. So there was a sudden shift in 2019. Next slide, please. So if we look at the issues that were plaguing the supply side, they can be clubbed into 3 themes. One is, you can say that is a DISCOM level, which are further 2 issues. Second is on the infrastructure level, which is again further 2 issues based on land and grid. And then there is some lack of participation in the corporate PPA market. In the issue with the DISCOMs is that there has been delay in signing of power supply agreements, which was to be signed between the tendering issue agency and the DISCOMs. And this was because sometimes when you are getting the prices from the tender, they are higher than the prices that have been budgeted by the DISCOMs. So because there is a mismatch, there is some delay in signing those agreements. Then there are delays of payments being for already installed projects. Some states have been delaying payments a lot, which has completely reduced their ability to attract any developer to participate in their tender. On the grid side, what has happened is that in the first 6 auctions, we saw a lot of the new competitive sites and the most robust infrastructure running out. And for the further auctions to be subscribed, either the sites had to be shifted into new locations, which would have increased the cost, or new infrastructure would have need to be established in the same areas where the sites are more competitive. So that became a bit bottleneck, which is why the supply side did not participate. And then there is a complete lack of C&I demand in this country because which is very big in the US market, for example. But in India, it is lacking because of myriad of policy issues. During January to March 2020, just before the lockdown, the government took cognizance of all these effects that there is so much demand that is coming up, but the supply is suddenly moving out. So they started to proactively look into mitigating some of these issues. With regard to DISCOMs, there was concrete step taken to mitigate the delay in signing a power supply agreement. What was done was that there was a proposal to bring the purchase obligations to a higher level, which would have created multiple sources of demand for the same tender that has been won. Similarly, there was a proposal that the large power consumers, which are non-DISCOM, for example, railways, and they consume a lot of power, they should be allowed to directly procure power and not go through a DISCOM, and that bulk demand should be tendered out. In terms of purchase delays, government thought of incentive as well as penalty provision, where they made it mandatory that some letter of credit needs to be signed by DISCOMs, and if there is a payment delay of 3 to 6 months, they could be encashed. If there was a delay which was further, then the government could approach the RBI and stop the release of funds, so central funds to the state governments, which could have incentivized the state government to please their dues. So there was some sort of active planning that was happening during January to March to mitigate that. In terms of infrastructure, government decided to remove the price caps in the latest SECI 9 tender, which would allow probably the developers to move out of the locations which are very competitive to a place where it might be expensive, but there could be a higher price there, which could open up the volume. And in order to ease the bottleneck of land, government decided to open up 25 gigawatt of renewable energy power parks, which is open for both solar and wind. This was built on the success of solar parks that were there in the country. In terms of grid, the price caps would also help, but also new substations have been planned by the government, which would come towards 2022, and we expect that this grid bottleneck would get resolved in 2022. And in terms of corporate market, the medium term is to bring in the bulk demand and give them direct offer, but also in the medium to long term, completely revamp the tariff policy and make it market driven, where the subsidies are given directly into the bank accounts and not indirectly by subsidizing some power. So these are some of the reforms that were under consideration to mitigate the supply side bottlenecks. Next slide. But next slide. Yeah. But our focus here today is to talk about the demand, and that demand is driven by the pipeline here. I think, Elisa, we missed a slide. You go just back. Yeah, sorry. Okay, come to the next slide. Yeah. So if we look at the demand in India, it is coming from the three main areas. One is the state governments, one is the central government, and then the C&I demand. We estimated that the pipeline in the state governments, state markets to be around 0.9 gigawatt, in the central markets to be around 7.7 gigawatt, and the pipeline estimation is hard to do in the C&I market because that is not publicly available. We expected some new orders to come in 2021 to be around 1 gigawatt from state, around 2 to 4 gigawatt from the central government, and around 1.5 gigawatt from the C&I market. And this combination of pipeline and the new orders that were expected based on the power purchase obligations that are there across the country, we were expecting the forecast to come into this. All this data is available at our website as well, and you can visit and get that data. Next slide. So before COVID stuck, we were expecting that the government would miss the 60 gigawatt target. And in the base case, we were expecting that the total installations would reach to around 51 gigawatt because some of the pipeline and the new orders would only limit us to that. There was issues, as I talked about, the grid infrastructure, the land infrastructure, which would have limited. Even if we were to try and bring in new tenders into the market, it would not have been possible to go beyond that because of the supply side bottlenecks. So we were expecting around 51 gigawatt of market to be achieved. In the higher case, we were expecting that the financial stress that started to grip India in 2019, that would not be impacting the renewable energy market. There would be priority lending to the sector. The players would be able to raise finance. The total market would have then gone up from 50 to 54. Some of the states would have sorted out their payment delays, and that would have also created some demand in the market. In the low case, we were expecting that if the financial stress were to further aggravate, and that would have put into risk the existing pipeline from some of the leveraged players, that would have led to cancellation of some pipeline numbers, and the complete demand that was coming from states which were in big payment delays, that would be wiped out. So we were expecting that in the low case, country would reach around 48 gigawatt of market. Due to COVID, next slide. Due to COVID, we see that the market has to be further adjusted to the recent realities. One of the realities due to COVID is, we can all see, is the most immediate impact, that is what will happen to the projects that were under construction, and they will kind of be shifted and there will be delays in their commissioning. But I think there is also a second order impact which needs to be factored into the volumes, as the volumes are likely to be reduced both in terms of pipeline and new installation. So in terms of what we see as an immediate impact, we see that there were around 1.8 gigawatt of projects which were scheduled for Q1 and Q2 2020 commissioning and are already under construction. They will be delayed, but they will definitely be commissioned within 2020, that is for sure. There were some projects which were totally kind of coming up to 1 gigawatt, which were expected to be scheduled in Q4. Scheduled commissioning was in Q4. We expect that these projects to be shifted towards 2021 because because of the shutdown, there is no approval that is coming, and it might be some time before things start settling down. And because of the supply chain now taking some time to start up, and Amar can comment on that, we see some of these projects to be shifting towards 2021. Then in the second order impact, where we see the impact on volume, we expect that the projects from the existing pipeline to be dropped. Even before the lockdown was announced, we were estimating that around 1 gigawatt of pipeline was under risk, in the sense that there was it was with players which were highly leveraged, and there was a little bit doubt around whether they will be able to execute the projects that they have, especially because they had won it at really, really competitive prices, and any change in the base assumptions would have impacted those projects. So around 1 gigawatt, we were already expecting not to come online from the pipeline that that I just showed you. We expect that due to COVID, the financial stress to further aggravate, around 1.5 to 2 gigawatt of such projects could further get impacted, and the market could see a cancellation of such of that magnitude. So this will have an impact that, from the 4.3 gigawatt that we were looking at installations in 2021, we will see around 3 gigawatt of installation in 2021. And the 2020, in the base case, it was 3.3, so we only see 2.6 gigawatt coming. In 2022, the main thrust of volume would have come from the new tenders that were to be announced. We expect that this tendering activity to decline in this year and the next year. We were expecting 4-ish gigawatt of new tenders. We expect that 2 gigawatt of new volume subscription were to be coming in 2020 out of which we now expect only a gigawatt to be finally subscribed. Even though if the tender comes in, looking at the way the supply chain is right now and the financing situation that has come up in the country, it might be that there could be a stress this year for the pipeline, which can then continue in the next year. So overall, the volume, rather than 5.5 gigawatt in 2022, it could actually be 3.5 to 3.9 gigawatt. So in total, we expect the market, rather than installing around 11 gigawatt, to be 9 to 10, 9.5 gigawatt in the period from 20 to 2022. So that covers our understanding of how the pipeline may evolve based on the granular one-to-one mapping on the projects and the players and the regulations and both the supply and demand side logics. All of this data, next slide. All of this data you can visit on our website at emergenc.com/expertise. There are multiple links where you can access this data. A lot of the notes have been published in the last 6 months. This is all available for free. And for any queries, you can always write to us at info@emergenc.com. I look forward to answering your questions. Over to you, Amar. Thank you.
Thank you, Sidharth. That was very nice insight, and we really walked through the market updates, what has been happening during the COVID scenario and pre-scenario, as well as the post one. And you're also setting a phase for Amar, which he will be talking on the policy. So it will be interesting to know from Amar's view, because he's been the policy director and closely involved with the OEM. So let us hear his views on the current scenarios. Over to you, Amar.
Sure. Thank you, Jai. I'm audible. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go.
All right. So good afternoon, good evening to everybody. My name is Amar Variawa. I work as a Director Public Affairs in Vestas, India. So, I would like to start with something positive that, the today's technology is tomorrow's commodity. That is what I feel. And as you all know that the market forces within renewable energies are constantly changing, constantly evolving, mainly because of the technology innovation, the tariff, the trade war, and the most recently the global pandemic. And if you see the year 2020 has witnessed an unprecedented impact of COVID-19 on humankind and the global economy. And I'm sure that it will be a huge task for all of us to recover from this particular disruption. Now, talking about the impact here, so state of Indian economy, if you see, it has come from a slowdown to the complete standstill position now. On 24th of March, Indian Prime Minister has announced a 3 week of nationwide lockdown starting from 25th March until 14th of April, and then further extended until 3rd of May. And situation after 3rd May is also not very clear in terms of resuming the normalcy. So this situation has actually given a very tough choice to the government here to choose between the saving life or saving economy, and definitely Indian government has chosen the former one. But the COVID-19 pandemic has brought the Indian economy from considerable strain to the standstill position, and the wind sector is no different here. If you see the capacity addition was very slow last year, and it has now come to the almost a complete pause. If you see the situation of the complete installation of a wind energy in 1920 financial year, it was around 2.1 gigawatt. Before that, it was around 1.5 gigawatt, and the previous year it was around 1.7 gigawatt. Now these numbers are very scary, especially considering the ambitious target of 60 gigawatt by 2022. And one more aspect, which is the total manufacturing capacity of around 10 gigawatt, putting all OEM together in India. So considering these two aspects, the number looks quite scary. Now, the third point, I would like to talk about the sharp drop in the electricity demand. As Sidharth was also talking about this aspect, basically this lockdown has impacted the most of the commercial and industrial establishment in a shutdown situation, and also the stoppage of the passenger railway services. Now, if you see, this segment actually constituted almost 40% of Indian electricity demand, and because of lockdown, the demand has gone down significantly. Now this reduction in demand has also impacted the supply side very hard, particularly the grids of taking capability of wind and solar power generation. Liquidity issue. Now this is the most the biggest as well as most severe issue that we are facing in India today. If you see, the lockdown has affected the electricity demand and the cash flow of already financially stressed distribution company. We call it as Discom in India, and many consumers are unable to pay their dues in Discoms. In fact, Minister of Power has requested different state governments to not to charge the surcharge of to the consumer those who are paying late due to lockdown situation, and this has affected the cash flow of the Discoms quite significantly. If you see, the power generation companies are already facing delay in payment from the Discoms across different states, and Discom owed almost 88,000 to 90,000 crore, the two generation companies prior to pandemic situation. And now, because of the since the revenue from a CNI consumer touching almost nil, the Discoms will be pushed to the brink. Now, this particular liquidity crunch, coming from Discom to IPP, is having a direct impact on the entire value chain, from IPP to OEMs, OEM to component suppliers, from component suppliers to the raw material suppliers, and the entire SME and SME sectors. SME sector is getting affected because of it. In fact, many companies are running the operations, or they are probably not able to run the operation, and still they have to pay the salary to their manufacturing employees or a total employee base. The last point is the huge impact on the manufacturing activity and the wind power project construction activity. So if you see, due to lockdown, the most affected segment is manufacturing segment, because they are not able to resume the activity either in full or a partial capacity. On a time-to-time basis, we have seen the order from Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, or the Revenue and the Disaster Management Department of different state government to come out with GOs or advisories and orders. But these orders are sometimes giving relaxation, and most of the time they are giving restrictions to resume the activity. The most of the time, the industrial establishment which are in the rural area or away from the municipal corporation limit, or operating out of a special economic zone, export orient unit, or industrial assets, are permitted to operate in a limited way. That too with the rider that they have to arrange the stay and the food, doctor, all the safety and hygiene standards as per the SOP defined by Ministry of the Health, in their facility. Even after doing that, due to social pressure from family and the community, the employees are not able to turn around, to attend the office, or to manufacturing unit. Now, it is also very important to note here that only resuming the manufacturing activity for OEM is not sufficient. Okay, the subsequently all the suppliers and component suppliers also need to resume the manufacturing activity. Somewhere on 15th of April, MHA has come out with the guidelines saying that all the RE project construction activity can be resumed. However, when it comes down to state government, we have seen that the relaxation has not come, and due to that, the movement of the capital goods, cranes, heavy materials and equipments across the state border, across the district border is still a challenging situation. And at the end of the day, the project construction activity is not resumed in full capacity even today. Please go to the next slide. Yeah. So in this situation, if you see the support from government, so MNRE has provided the rock solid support to industry, to all the stakeholders. I'll just give you a small example that, earlier the secretary of MNRE used to conduct a meeting with all the industry stakeholders on a monthly basis. But now if you see, meetings are happening on a weekly basis. Sometimes it happens twice in a week. So this is quite good. And needless to mention here, all the meetings are happening through video conferencing way. So, people are attending from their home and their own, the places. Now, MNRE has given a very good order, which says that, must run and redeem generation start status for renewable generators and on-time payment of dues for all the generators. So they have actually released the office memorandum on 4th of April to all the power secretaries of different states, DISCOMs, SECI, NTPC, and they actually reiterate the fact that the renewables are going to be continue even during the lockdown period. And the this was actually quite a big the achievement for all of us. The and the curtailment, only curtailment, but for the grid safety reason would amount to deemed generation in this particular situation. The RE industry has been given a moratorium for almost 3 months on the repayment of the loans which they have taken, and it is given by RBI. MNRE has also granted the blanket extension of time for of lockdown plus 30 days, which is around 1 month for RE projects. And if you see, they have a very ambitious target now to conclude 12 gigawatt of bids before December 2020. And out of that, 2 gigawatt of bid is already announced. In fact, on 30th of April, there's a pre-bid discussion happening for a 2 gigawatt bid. Apart from that, if you see, there are much needed support given by MNRE in terms of CCDC certificate issue for the important components which you are bringing from abroad. The industry is also requesting for liquidity injection scheme, which probably they are trying to work out with Ministry of Finance, and generation based incentive they are planning to release in some capacity for the month of April, May and June. So these kind of things are quite useful for industry, and MNRE, as I said earlier, they are supporting to industry to a great extent in this difficult time. Can I go to the next slide, please? All right. Now, enough of the issues and the challenges that we are facing. Let's focus on the opportunity ahead. Well, post lockdown, if you see, market will go only in one direction, and that is upward direction. Believe me, this is very true, because today, due to lockdown, most of the industries, most of the factories, most of the industrial establishments are shut down, and situation cannot go more worse than this in whatever we are facing today. So once the lockdown is lifted, most of the manufacturing setup will resume their activity. This will probably increase the power demand, and hence there will be more good days for the power sector and hence the wind sector. If you see, India to emerge as a global manufacturing hub for wind energy, wind turbine generator and the components. This is very good point. Like solar, like China for solar, India is emerging as a global manufacturing hub for wind sector. And here most of the global players are considering India as a strategic market, especially for 4 reasons. Because India actually provides the mega market. Second, there are abundance of the talented pool of resources available here. Third thing is the global supply chain opportunity, and the last but not the least is service business opportunity. So as you know that with the country with around average age of 29 years, and second highest English speaking the population in the world, India is definitely ready to take a bigger leap for the global market once the epidemic is over, when this pandemic is over. Then, of course, there's a huge opportunity for Make in India and skill development. As you see, Make in India products are going to be the new benchmark in the global market in no time. And India, when I talk about Make in India sector and when I talk about wind sector is already at around 75 to 80% Make in India level. And this, if you see in India, wind sector is there for last 3 decades. In 3 decades, the sector has generated around 2 million jobs in through different OEMs, developers, and the project developers, suppliers, component suppliers, SMEs and MSMEs. And the story has just begun. The next point is export of RE services. So far, we have heard about export of turbine, export of component, but the new era is emerging now, and that is called export of RE services. And I'm sure that India is going to be the house for all the IT and IT-enabled services related to RE domain in near future. And these services could be wind resource assessment, forecasting and scheduling, engineering and business services, O&M services, R&D services, and so on and so forth. And this domain is going to be a so big domain that it will probably create a large number of jobs and hence the skill set. So I'm sure that this domain is a new domain waiting for us to explore in the time to come. Next point is, so far we have been quite successful in the wind auction and wind domain alone. But now I think, we need to seriously explore the wind solar hybrid domain. I think 1 or 2 projects commissioning will add more confidence into the developer as well as in OEM kitty that yes, this is possible. An element of RTC attached to wind solar hybrid. RTC is round the clock power. So element of RTC attached to wind solar hybrid project will be like icing on a cake. So when PSUs are planning for solar projects, they can definitely consider the element of hybrid solar and wind to fulfill their targets also and ambition also for RE deployment. Last but not the least is RE digitization, a new normal. So basically, during the this lockdown has taught us one fundamental rule of the business, that the show must go on. If the face-to-face way is not possible, then through digitization way. It's indeed a new normal way for us in the RE sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amar. That was very good insight, and you really complemented the 2 sectors. One is the policy as well as the manufacturing side, and it was almost getting closer to Sidharth's insight also. But now we would like to go into the overall supply chain, which has been affecting, and I would request Fen to talk a little bit on the overall supply chain, and particular to India, how it's going to be, because India is mostly sourcing materials from China. So his views will be important for this webinar. Over to you, Fen.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for the first 2 speakers, Sidharth and Amar, give their comment regarding the new outlook based on the new situation and from the policy angle and the turbine OEM point of view, and excellent insight about what's going on there. So now I'm going to spend, hopefully within 10 minutes, quickly go through what's going on with the impact of COVID-19 on global wind supply chain. Ben already mentioned at his opening keynote, following the outbreak of COVID-19 and GWEC, we launched the wind industry COVID-19 response hub, trying to bring up to speed about what's going on the global level, from the policy, supply chain, regulation, different aspects, make sure that we have the latest information available for the industry to help the speed recovery and make everything relatively transparent. And this slide where you can see since the outbreak of coronavirus in China, in February, in the middle of February, GWEC co-developed the COVID-19 update about impact. At that time, they focused mainly on China. However, the market is so dynamic, just within 1 month, the COVID-19 has become a pandemic. So therefore, on the global map, where you can see simply corona virus has put a pause on the global activity throughout each single market. Basically, the dark blue means where we have the nationwide lockdown, and for the light blue, that's country even without complete lockdown, but they still have implied the travel ban and the partial lockdown. This simply had the impact on the flow of the component, and also severe impact or delay on component input and output. Next slide. So due to the impact, so on the country level, in order to stem the spread of virus, each country has adopted a different approach. I'm going to take Spain and India, for example. First, let's take a look at Spain. Due to the outbreak in Europe, I think we all know Italy and Spain, they are the countries severe impact by the virus. Many people has lost their lives, and for the safety purpose, and also make sure that we get the damage under control. In Spain, the government has issued the strict lockdown. Actually, even before the lockdown, some of the facility in Spain has already closed down for the safety purpose. So for policy, normally the wind industry in general, turbine nacelle facility, and also component manufacturer, they have locked down from the 30th of March till the 14th of April. That means there are 2 weeks suspension in terms of production, even though right now all the manufacturing facility have resumed the normal activity in the middle of April after Easter, but still from what we can see, minimum 2 weeks disruption on the supply chain has been recorded. This simply means delay and also challenge for project execution, and also the export of the component from Spain to the rest of the world. Next slide. Let's take a look at the situation in India. It's the same. Due to the virus outbreak in India, the government also released the lockdown from the 24th of March. And we have a new report regarding nacelle simply closed down temporarily, not just international supplier like SGRE, Vestas, and also the local turbine OEMs, Suzlon, Inox, etc. They all closed temporarily their facility. As the previous speaker, Amar mentioned, India actually it's a manufacturing hubs in terms of the turbine and also component. Therefore, many component supplier they have to halt the production as well due to the government lockdown. Even though in the middle of April, the government announced the selected additional activity will be allowed to open, but in reality, it's still a challenge. As Amar mentioned, you got the federal regulation, but when you start doing something, you will feel the challenge because there are still regulations on the state level. Therefore, we don't believe that the manufacturing facility will resume the normal capacity until the end of the lockdown. We don't know if there will be a further extension, but so far we can confirm the damage has been done in terms of the flow of the supply chain, component manufacturing, and turbine assembly in India. Now let's take a look at the global situation. Next slide, please. Thank you. So from this slide, we can see on this global map, we have already highlighted the top 5 wind market. Number 1 in China, number 2 US, number 3 that's Germany, number 4 India, number 5 that's Spain. So that's top 5 market in terms of cumulative installation. Aside from Germany, even though there is no full lockdown in Germany and no report regarding the temporary suspension in terms of production in Germany, but still, out of the top 5 market, we have 4 countries reported the challenge in terms of disruption on the global supply chain. February, March, basically, it's not a disaster, but to put everything on hold. That's the situation in China. We had a webcast together with Sevilla in the middle of February. It has been confirmed a minimum 3 months delay. That's what the industry is working with. They're trying to ask for the extension from the NEA for the deadline of project execution. Luckily, China gets the virus under control within 2 months, but situation is different for the rest of the world. Based on the current approach, we don't believe that most of the country can do the same and get the virus under control within the same time frame. Therefore, the situation is slightly different. Out of China, then we saw the disruption in Italy, Spain, India, and interesting enough, I think in the area of February, I remember both SGRE and India, they mentioned, the management mentioned in the news, they tried to use their India facility as a solution to mitigate the expected damage caused by coronavirus in China, because at that time, China, the picture was not clear if or when the virus will be under control very soon. However, the following lockdown implied in India on 24th of March makes this solution, this alternative solution, suddenly unworkable. So therefore, more challenge has been bob up to the management, to the international OEMs, and also following the lockdown in Europe, and the situation is getting worse in the United States. And we had in our information hub, you can find the update about what's going on the supply chain. For example, SGRE, due to the disruption of the supply chain, they cannot get enough or spare part to the states. Therefore, they have to temporarily send their employee home and waiting for the further notification. 3 to 4 weeks has been expected due to the delay. And 2 weeks ago, actually last week, in our weekly update, we mentioned that there are more than hundreds of COVID-19 positive case, unfortunately, has been reported in one of the LM blades facility in North Dakota. They have to close down, now LM owned by GE Renewable. They have to close down the factory for safety purpose and local regulation. 2 weeks close down minimum in order to make it work again. So again, if we aggregate what's going on in all the key wind market globally, so it's safe to say COVID-19 will definitely cause the challenge in terms of project execution. So we believe that there will be a slowdown on new growth, at least for 2020. Ben mentioned at the beginning, I think it makes sense to think about the relatively midterm impact on Corona 2020. That's definitely the case. And what the situation could be next year or year after, we're going to closely follow this situation. So at the GWEC, we believe that on general, our guideline is that we believe that 15% of downgrade, it is possible based on our Q1 global market outlook released in the end of March. This summertime, we're going to do a close outlook based on the impact country by country level. But so far, we only use the guideline. Next slide. So that's the general situation in terms of the impact of the coronavirus on supply chain. But now I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the market consolidation. Pre-coronavirus, actually, there is already a big concern in terms of the impact of the market consolidation on Tier 2 and Tier 3 global turbine OEMs. And now, taking into account the new environment brought by Corona 2019, we believe that the new situation is probably going to accelerate the market consolidation from the turbine OEM perspective. The slide on the right side, where you can see on the global level, in 2018, the top 6 turbine OEM already control 70% of global market share. Our preliminary data indicate 2019, the situation maintains. Actually, the market share for other turbine OEM at the bottom, look at I'm talking about the bar chart for 2019, you can see they continue to lose the market share, not really significantly, but the trend is still there. And on the left side, where you can see in China, we have this trend. 2018, the top 4 Chinese turbine OEM hold 70% local market share. And in 2019, according to the preliminary data, and similar situation, actually the top 4 slightly increase the market share. So at GWEC, we're going to release the global wind supply side data report earlier next month. Normally we release the report in April, but due to the coronavirus, it also caused a delay in terms of the data confirmation. We're going to anyway release the new data. For the final data, you can find that from our final report. Next slide. I just mentioned the global picture, but now let's take a look at the situation in India. Next slide, please. Alicia, thank you. So in India, similar situation. For example, this bar chart indicates the number of suppliers in India in different years. The first bar chart, that's the situation in 2015. We have 13 turbine OEM reported turbine installation in the calendar year 2015. But now in 2019, numbers has been reduced to 8 turbine OEMs. So roughly reflect the previous, situation mentioned in the previous slide. Globally speaking, in the period of 2013, globally we have like 67 turbine OEM active in the market. By 2018, the numbers has downgraded, dropped to 37. That's the situation last year. This year, probably we will end up at the same situation. But looking forward, for example, let's take a look at India. From the order intake, where we can see we have 5.4 gigawatts in the pipeline, but the pipeline shared by only 8 turbine OEM. And last week or week before, we all know Sunwen has agreed to sell their India business to an international conglomerate. We don't know who they are. They may end up as one of the players already included in the chart. We don't know. But based on the trend here, we believe that the coronavirus will split the trends in terms of market consolidation. The reason is simple. I think our colleague Amar from Vestas already mentioned the coronavirus is going to have a huge impact in terms of the bankability and also the cash flow. From our side, where we monitor what's going on from the turbine OEM side, we believe that coronavirus are going to test the capability of the turbine OEM in terms of mobility, in terms of a global supply chain. If you are only active in your home market, if your local market is down, you're completely no other solution. Also, without the international footprint, like the leading turbine OEM like SGRE, Vestas, some other big turbine OEM, it's hard to balance the risk by leverage your international footprint. So from these angles, and in terms of the balance sheet and the new challenge after the virus, we're talking about the global recession. Before coronavirus, we already see some local turbine OEM already facing the challenge in terms of the cash flow. So therefore, we believe that moving forward, the situation will continue in India. Probably we will see more turbine OEMs leave the market, but let's see what will happen after this. So that's the high-level summary in terms of coronavirus from my side. Thank you. Back to you, Jay.
Thank you, Ben, and it was very good. And we are running short of time, as well as we have questions about you, but I don't think we'll have a room for that. But I would like to thank all the speakers from Ben, who clearly mentioned about our emerging market in India and how things can go forward, and the challenging insight given by Sidharth, and finally by Amar, who gave a very good insight on the policies and OEMs challenges and way forward for the opportunities for Indian market. And not to forget, Fen, you have given a clear insights on the global chain, which covers Indian market as well as the global. So we all have visualized the picture how it can, our market can future be in this scenario. Thank you all, the speakers, for your time, and we welcome you. And I think I have a few minutes to take a question. Alisa, could you just take over on the question to shoot this? You have time?
Yeah, I think we'll have time for one question here, and we have
Okay.
Suchit, who is on the line to ask a question to our
Okay.
panel.
Okay.
Hello, sir. Good evening, all. I am Suchit Hoti. I'm presently doing Masters in Renewable Energy at Terry University. I have a question, a short question to Sidharth Jain, sir. Sir, out of the 60 gigawatt ambitious target set by MNRE, 5 gigawatt is allotted to mainly offshore. So my question is, is it going to be met by end of 2022, or is it going to be only by onshore wind?
So if you look at right now, the target of 60 gigawatt is not going to get met, and we're going to hit around 48 gigawatt out of the 60 gigawatt. So there is a room, and even onshore wind cannot meet it. Regarding offshore wind, there has been only an expression of interest, but there has been no policy that has been outlined. The tender was supposed to come in October last year, but it has not yet come, and because of the financial crisis, we don't see the tender coming in. So as of now, we don't see 5 gigawatt coming there. Even if 1 gigawatt tender comes in and we are able to commission that by 2025, that will be a big step forward for offshore wind. And regarding the funds, I think this fund is part of the overall 60 gigawatt plan, because any wind that will be procured for offshore wind will go into the renewable purchase obligations. That is part of the 60 gigawatt. So yes, out of the 60 gigawatt, offshore wind can play a role, but looking at the realities right now, it will not happen.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Alisa, you still have time? Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I think that's fine, Sidharth. Thank you. And I think we'll be running short of time. But anyway, I'd just like to mention the questioners that we will be sending the answers by email. And thanks a lot for joining us at this time. And see you later with another update. And I'd like to say that the report will be launched shortly, and we will keep you updated through our media. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. You'll receive also a link to the recording of this webcast in a follow-up email. If you have any further questions, please contact covidresponse@gwec.net. And as Jay mentioned, anyone who answered a question today, but we didn't have time to answer it live, we will be following up via email. So please wait for that. And any other information you can find on the impact of COVID-19 and our on the wind industry, you can find on our response hub on the GWEC website here, and you can scan the QR code to access this. On behalf of GWEC and all of our wonderful speakers today, we thank you for joining us, and we look and have a great evening and afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.